Hello and thank you for joining. We begin with the Ontario Legislature set to reconvene this week. The first ever MPP for the Kiiwetinoong riding is looking forward to holding the new government to account. Saul Mamakwa says he'll assure efforts will be made that the voices in the remote riding will be heard. Adam Riley reports.
One of the newest MPPs for the region is ready to get to work. The NDP's Saul Mamakwa was elected last month to represent the newly established riding of Kiiwetinoong. He says he is breaking new ground on how to provide constituency offices and services to residents, as much of the riding is made up of remote fly-in communities.
One of the things that's really interesting is because Kiiwetinoong is a new riding, I have to create office space and a structure or a model that will work for the North. And even create staff that will understand the real issues that are happening in the North.
Mamakwa says he is glad to see his counterpart to the South, Kenora Rainy River PC MPP Greg Rickford, receive a major post within the Ford cabinet, which was announced last week. However, he does have some concerns.
I will sit down with him at some point to kind of where can we work together on some issues, and it's not we're talking about lives here. We're talking about the lands and resources, energy, and those are some of the key items, and that's a very big file, and I don't think you'll have time to address those big key items. Again, a part-time minister is not good enough for those big files.
And Mamakwa is echoing the concerns of many area leaders about the inclusion of Indigenous affairs into Rickford's responsibilities, rather than keeping it under a standalone minister.
I think it's not just one step back, it's 2-3 steps back. And when we talk about reconciliation, when we talk about relationships with First Nations people, with Indigenous people in Ontario, that's not good enough.
Mamakwa says he has spoken with several of his NDP colleagues and believes they will support a request to see that portfolio receive its own minister. The legislature is expected to be recalled this upcoming Wednesday, so MPPs both new and old can select a speaker, with a throne speech expected on Thursday. Adam Riley, TBT News.
Greenstone's mayor is applauding the agreement between the Long Lake 58 First Nation and the Greenstone gold mines. Last month, the two parties entered into a partnership aimed at bringing project support and jobs to the community. The gold mines Hard Rock project south of Geraldton is currently in the middle of an environmental assessment, which is due to be completed later this year. Greenstone Mayor Renaud Beaulieu is a supporter of the project and is excited to see an agreement of this nature come to fruition.
Kudos to them, kudos to their citizens, and what this does is it really brings an economic drive in our community, because I could see this as where our neighboring 58 will look at positive aspects of looking into getting into business, creating new jobs. All around for the region, it's just something that we need to feel good about.
The mine, once in operation, is expected to bring 500 direct jobs and hundreds of other indirect jobs to the region. Ontario Provincial Police in Dryden have 2 people in custody after a major drug and weapons seizure Monday. During a routine traffic stop, officers discovered approximately 7 pounds of cocaine and heroin, 2 loaded handguns, and a large amount of cash in a vehicle. Police are still working to put a total value on the drugs and cash that were confiscated. 2 men in their 20s, both from southern Ontario, were taken into custody and are facing charges for drug possession, trafficking, prohibited firearms, and possession property obtained by crime. The suspects were scheduled to appear in Dryden Court this past Tuesday. The Thunder Bay Regional Health Sciences Center is looking to redesign its mental health and emergency areas. Mental health visits at the facility are the second highest in the province, and officials have now come up with some potential changes following a recent analysis of the emergency room space. The hospital is looking to create the proper mental health emergency service and special triage area next to its current emergency intake. A stabilization unit adjacent to the adult mental health department is another key component of the plan, aimed at tripling the space for patients. Dr. Peter Voros is the hospital's Executive VP of Patient Programs. He acknowledges the lack of space.
The space was not designed to manage this level of visits for mental health and substance use. So we've created 2 interview spaces, but That's really a space to move a patient in, do a confidential interview, and move them out. We actually only have 2 spaces to put someone that's they're able to stay on a stretcher in the emergency, so that means they're in the hallway.
Regional hospital officials will soon be meeting with the Northwest LHIN to talk about operating costs. A capital spending request for the renovations is currently being formulated for the Ministry of Health. Greenstone OPP are considering arson as a cause of a house fire late Monday evening in Long Lac. Police, EMS, and firefighters were called to the home shortly before midnight on July 2nd. There were no injuries as all the occupants and their pets were able to escape the fire. However, the building suffered extensive damage. At this time, police suspect foul play and are asking for the public to come forward with information to assist the investigation. Greenstone Council is looking at ways to show the public its practices on how it hires employees in the municipality. As well, they recently debated Greenstone's remuneration policy for council members and said goodbye to its 2 student councillors. Adam Riley has more.
Last month's council meeting brought councillors out to Karamat to discuss the many issues facing the municipality, specifically in the operations portfolio. First up was the hiring policy, which, as Mayor Renaud Beaulieu says, was a way to show more transparency and fairness in municipal hirings.
Council wanted to see a written policy on the hiring, and because we have, given some of our staff more authority through council, and the CEO has that authority, and we need to have a path, I guess, if you want to call it, in regards to how we want to see the hiring done.
Council also discussed its remuneration policy, which Beaulieu says has to be reviewed each year and hasn't been increased since 2001 when Greenstone was created. Recent changes in taxation means members will now be taxed on 1/3 of their earnings according to the tax bracket the member belongs to. Beaulieu says in his 8 years as mayor of Greenstone, council has always felt compensation was fair.
I still think it's fair. I don't think we should be losing from the new rules that have come out, but I don't think we should be gaining because I think we are being treated fairly.
An increase to the compensation has not been decided upon, but council has asked for a report as to how this change will affect them. However, council is also looking at how much members receive for travel within the municipality for official business, such as council meetings.
That hasn't changed in years and years, and as we all know, the price of gas since 2001 has increased, so going to Karamat or going to Nikina, it does cost more money. That we will probably be looking at.
It was also the end of term for the 2 student councillors who represented both of the school boards on council. Dulcie Smith and Logan Furroy have been providing a youth voice to the council for the past school year. Furroy says he gained valuable experience from council members and feels he was following in his family's footsteps.
I've always been interested in politics at a very young age, and my grandfather was a councillor for the municipality of Ear Falls, and he's my hero. And honestly, when I seen the opportunity to join the municipality and make a difference in my community, I jumped at the chance.
Furroy says this isn't the end for him as he was re-elected by his classmates and plans on returning to council next fall. Adam Riley, TBT News.
Federal Minister Patty Hajdu says she and the federal government continue to stand by the national inquiry into murdered Indigenous women and girls, despite dealing with numerous issues along the way. The fully independent inquiry was given a 6-month extension last month, which pushes a new deadline to June of 2019. Many lawyers and officials have elected to opt out of the inquiry since it began in September of 2016, stating that the inquiry needs to be started over entirely. However, Hajdu explains that is not a viable option.
There's been a huge investment of time and energy, not only by the commissioners, but by the number of families that have come forward and testified and shared their very painful stories. And so I would say that although there may be voices calling for a do-over or start over, there are an equal number of voices saying, please don't stop. Please make sure that you use the information that we've provided in a way that's going to mean change to the systems and structures that continue to perpetuate this intolerable tragedy.
Hajdu also says her hope and expectation is that the Commission will deliver on the terms of their contract, which is to offer a full report detailing the increased deaths and disappearances of Indigenous females. The report is also supposed to outline actions that the government can take to minimize the tragedies. The federal government announced a major investment in the port of Thunder Bay Tuesday. Transportation infrastructure around Kiefer Terminal will be receiving over $7 million worth of upgrades in an effort to increase efficiency and capacity at the port. Tony Brar has the details.
The federal government is improving international trade flow by easing capacity constraints and improving overall shipping efficiency at the Port of Thunder Bay. This will be done by adding additional tracks and laydown areas for steel and cargo and building a new 4,600 square meter heated facility at Kiefer Terminal to meet the port's requirements during the winter months. Minister of Transport Marc Garneau says there's tremendous value in investing in northwestern Ontario.
The Port of Thunder Bay is an important economic driver for the region. It's an important port in terms of moving goods either east or west, and to help as part of an initiative we call the National Trade Corridors Initiative. We felt that it was a good investment. The port came to us. We felt that this was a good investment, and we're happy to make that today.
We've been working on this in stages for the last 12 years or so. This phase will be more laydown area, staging area for cargo, 8 more car spots, redoing our rail yard, and building a new warehouse. Our warehouses are currently at capacity, so building more capacity for shipments is really what it's going to do for us.
The $7.5 million will cover half of the total upgrade costs at the Port of Thunder Bay. The remaining amount will come from Port Authority's self-generated funds. The investment is part of a $2 billion National Trade Corridors Fund, which is deemed to be a key element of the country's 11-year plan to improve the future of transporting goods.
Ultimately, that's what this fund is about. This is about getting our goods to market and diversifying our markets and ensuring that we can deliver for the thousands of people that are shipping things across the country into other markets every single day.
Our goods that we produce in this country, whether it's commodities or finished goods, go to our ports, and that includes Thunder Bay, and they go on to other destinations. And our whole objective, because we're a trading nation, is to do it as efficiently as possible.
An objective that also aims to keep Canada as a global leader in trading goods. Tony Brar, TBT News.
Coming up after the break, Atikokan passes its 2018 budget and hires a new CAO. Welcome back. Like many communities across the Northwest, Atikokan has passed its latest municipal budget. It outlines that municipal tax rates will go down. However, they will see a slight increase on their bills. And as Adam Riley explains, despite a push towards debt repayment, there is still some infrastructure work that needs to be completed.
Atikokan's Town Council has passed its last municipal budget of the current term of council. In it, there is a small increase of 0.9%. Chief Administrative Officer Jason Young says there is a tax levy increase, but it's not on the part of the town. He says recent assessments by the Municipal Property Assessment Corporation have increased property values.
Even though we had to increase our budget, we actually reduced our tax rate. So there was a reduction in the education tax rate, and we were also able to reduce our municipal component of the rate. But unfortunately, like you said, there's an actual small increase to the average homeowner, and that's because of assessment values.
Young says administration and council are very pleased with the rate, as this is the first time in many years the tax rate in Atikokan has decreased. In total, the budget is just under $16 million, and most of that money will go towards town operations and debt repayment. Atikokan Mayor Dennis Brown says years ago the community had no debt, but several infrastructure projects forced the town to take on debt.
Over the last little while, because of our redoing of Main Street and building the town hall and redoing Willow Road and fixing up the airport and the wellness center, we've gone into debt, and we're not going to be going into debt anymore until we get this debt, a great deal of it paid off.
Despite a focus on repayment, there are still some capital projects currently underway in the community, such as upgrades to the sewage treatment plant and 2 of the pumping stations, which receive federal and provincial funding. As well, $800,000 will go towards the town's new landfill site, as the current one is at capacity.
One of the other things we're going to do this year, more than we've done in the past for quite a while, is do a great deal of patching on our roads. As I've told you before, that's one of our big issues, and we're doing at least $500,000.
Brown says he hopes the road work will be completed in time for the Atikokan Bass Classic next month. Adam Riley, TBT News.
The town of Atikokan has a new chief administrative officer to lead the various departments in the municipality. Since December, Jason Young held the role of CAO on an interim basis, but was given the job permanently last month. Atikokan Mayor Dennis Brown says Young has been with the town for 7 years, and having him in this capacity is a major benefit for the community. He adds Young's experience with town operations is also a key asset in the creation of the 2018 budget.
He knows, what's going on. He's an intelligent young man, and he good worker, and he applied for the job, and we went through a probationary period, and he was very successful, and so all of council certainly wanted to make him a permanent CAO, and he's doing that now, and we'll just keep working with him and make things even better for the town of Atikokan.
An Eastern Seals fundraiser, which was a popular summertime event for kids, has been put on hiatus this year. The Celebrity Skate for Eastern Seals is normally held in July for the past 15 years at the Thunder Bay Tournament Center. The event saw local kids raise money for the chance to skate and receive autographs with their NHL heroes. The skate raised around $180,000 for the charity since it began. Longtime organizer Rhonda Harrison says they had to cancel it this year because they were unable to secure funding for a summer student to help run the event. She adds that only 3 local NHLers turned out the last couple years, and the number of participants had dropped from an average of 300 kids down to 66 last year. Harrison says they are still hosting their Celebrity Hockey Classic in October, where adult hockey teams get to play with NHL legends. Coming up next, issues continue to plague the Thunder Bay District Humane Society to the point where shutting down might be their only option. The turmoil continues at the Thunder Bay and District Humane Society. Following the recent board resignations and labor issues, the nonprofit animal shelter is now facing a possible closure due to financial shortfalls. Humane Society officials have issued a plea to the community to help save the agency. Carmen Wong has the story.
Aside from picking up strays and arranging for adoptions, the Humane Society provides services such as agents who investigate animal cruelty complaints in the city and surrounding area. Funding for the shelter comes from donations and from the Ontario Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals. And while the society receives $5 million from the province, the local shelter receives only a small portion of it. Humane Society President Dr. Jack Remus says they can no longer function with the money that they have coming in. He says the shelter is in need for immediate financial assistance.
If we shut down and we bring in a lot of animals from out of town, and if we're not going to look after them, it really means that they would be passed on to the city, and that would really mean that they would be euthanizing hundreds of animals because they would be overwhelmed.
In the midst of a financial crisis, the Animal Humane Society has set up a GoFundMe page requesting the help from the community. They're hoping to raise $60,000, and the funds will go directly towards the shelter and its animals. Volunteer coordinator Cassandra Marcus says the money will go towards operational costs and animal vet and care bills. She says not many people realize that the shelter is nonprofit and does not receive direct government funding. The shelter relies on adoption income, fundraising, and donations in order to operate. Marcus says she trusts the public to help out in their time of need.
I'm pretty confident because our community is really amazing. They always pull together in times of need. They're always there to help each other out, local businesses, local families that have ever been in need, and many of the charities. So I feel confident that we can do this while also working on some really cool fundraising initiatives as well.
Another fundraising initiative is aimed at raising $30,000 for the completion of the low-cost spay and neuter clinic. A year and a half ago, PetSmart Foundation donated $350,000 to the shelter in hopes of taming the city's increasing population of stray cats and dogs. The clinic was set to open in September, but due to a funding shortfall, the clinic won't be operational until the new year at the earliest.
We felt that it was very important for us to have a spay and neuter clinic. There's where the problem is. With the large number of cats and dogs that get to be a problem, particularly on First Nations. So we've been able to put that into place, but our only problem is who's going to be paying for our staff, who's going to be paying for operations.
Remus says the Humane Society is seeking public funding from all levels of government, and he says it's an important tool to solving the region's animal problems. Carmen Wong, TBT News.
And finally, a large stretch of forest which straddles the Ontario-Manitoba border has been designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site. This is Canada's first mixed site, which is considered both a natural and cultural treasure. Beth McDonald has the details.
Teeming with biodiversity. Home to Indigenous people for more than 7,000 years, Pimacho-Winaki is the newest UNESCO World Heritage Site in Canada, a nearly 30,000 square kilometer area straddling the Manitoba-Ontario border, which includes 4 Manitoba First Nations. The site is an exceptional example of the Earth's boreal forest. The push to obtain the special world status, born 17 years ago, out of a desire to protect lands and preserve people's way of life.
We're stewards of the land. We pride ourselves on that. That's who we are. So this is something that we've seen as an international instrument to protect those lands above and beyond the federal and provincial protections.
Canada already has 8 cultural and 10 natural World Heritage Sites, ranging from the Rocky Mountains for its striking landscape to the Acadian farmlands of Grand Pré in Nova Scotia. But this is the first mixed natural and cultural site created in Canada, especially meaningful to those who helped make the bid a reality.
It's a dream come true. We want to be able to share what we have with the general public, with the whole world.
The Manitoba Chambers of Commerce says the site's unique status has tourism potential, but it's remote. The area is also prone to wildfires.
In terms of how it's going to be developed, I think makes sense, but I think it's obviously going to take some work to get it to that next stage of making it something that's a real draw around the world.
Backers of the bid are now turning their focus to how future generations will use the site. They plan to implement teachings, develop conservation programs, and find ways to bring people from far away to their doorstep. Beth Macton, LCTV News, Winnipeg.
Well, that's all we have for this week's edition of Northwest Newsweek. Thanks for watching and stay tuned until next time. I'm Jason Gaidola. Take care.